Good morning, Liberty North AP Dual Credit Psychology, virtual Wednesday, October 28th. And we're going to take notes over learning targets from Unit 3, number 7 and 8. And then also here at the beginning, I'm going to go over, just in case you were gone or you were absent, how to do part 2 of your Unit 3, number 1 lab, okay, which is the family genogram and map, okay? So part 1, which we've already done, is the nature part of your family. Okay, so you're going to diagram your family from your grandparents down to you, and then you're going to label any genetic influence, high adaptive value or low adaptive value that could influence you. Okay, part 2 then is going to be the nurture side, which is we're going to map for environmental influences, primarily relationships that could also influence you and your behavior. Okay. Now, if you do this in therapy, there are many different codes and keys that you can use. I think there's around 20. I'm only going to have you do 3 just to keep it simple. Your genogram and your map will get messy, but that's okay. All right. So you're going to map if there's conflict between any 2 people or groups of people in your family with the squiggly line. If there's alignment means that there's a bond, kind of just a connection, a closeness between 2 or more people. And then if there are boundaries, if there are natural divisions or divisions that have been created by the family structure that kind of separate individuals or groups or people from other people, okay? So just for examples, I think all of you should start off by aligning to one parent or the other. It is said that you align with one parent or the other. Now, that does not mean that you don't have a good relationship with the other parent. You just kind of have a more natural connection with one parent. I always tell students, think about when you're in college, who would be the first parent that you would probably call? So you can see I am more aligned with my mother. My brother is more aligned with my father. In this example, I was also aligned with my mom's dad, and my brother and I are aligned, okay? All right. Conflict. So basically it could be between, and I just put this here as an example. So sometimes if there is conflict, it's between my brother and my mom. Okay. This uncle had conflict with this whole side of the family, right? Which naturally created boundaries. You can have a boundary around an individual person or a group of people. For those of you who have divorce, step siblings, you're going to have a lot of boundaries on different sides of the family. If you have a brother or a sister away at college, they're naturally going to have a boundary around themselves because of distance. All right. So it's just kind of any division that kind of occurs. So since my mom's younger brother was out of the family a lot, there was a boundary with her and her older brother. My grandmother on my dad's side was a little bit more reclusive. She was an introvert. So she was harder to get to know. And then we have, of course, this whole family was divided into boundaries because of the action of this uncle, okay? So you just go through and look through your family diagram, and then what you want to find is any examples of conflict, alignment, or boundaries that might exist. And then you're going to kind of map those in there, okay? Then make sure on the lab you have 2 questions that you have to answer. Okay, about adaptive value and then nature nurture. So make sure that you get that done. Okay. All right, so let's go over to our notes, which are going to be right here, which I can probably move the desk over. Okay, so I'll move a desk over here. See if this helps a little bit better. Okay. Okay. All right. So we're going down learning target number 6 and learning target number 7. I've got some page numbers on here that will help you. There's some very good diagrams in the book that you need to look at that I've got. But learning target number 6 is identify basic processes and systems and the biological basis of behavior, including parts of the neuron. Okay, so that's going to be pages 86 to 87. in your book. Okay. All right, so let's go over that one. Okay, so what you have is, first of all, before we go over the parts of the neuron, the book, which are 3 vocab, also identify the 3 types of neurons that we have in our nervous system, which are important to know. All right, and then basically what I've done is I've related them to the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system functions that we've talked about in class yesterday and Monday. Okay, so we have sensory neurons, which obviously are the input process of the peripheral nervous system. So they are found in the peripheral nervous system, and they are in charge of bringing information in. So our senses pretty much collect energy from our environment, and then via the peripheral nervous system, they bring that input into the central nervous system. Okay. We also have motor neurons, which are in charge of the output process. They're also in the peripheral nervous system, because that's the job of the peripheral nervous system, is output as well, right? And they're going to connect. There are a series of muscles and glands, all right, that connect my central nervous system with those muscles, glands, so that I can have output, either voluntary, somatic, or involuntary, autonomic, okay? And then my third type are what we call interneurons, and they are neurons that are in my central nervous system throughout the brain and spinal cord, and they are in charge of the processing, okay? Part of the solution. So again, we have input, sensory neurons, processing, interneurons, and output motor neurons. All right, that's pretty much how it goes. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Then on page 78, there's a great diagram, great picture, and actually all the way through these pages, there are really good diagrams that the book uses, which show you the parts of a neuron that you need to know. Okay, so if you go to page 78 on your own, diagram or figure 9.2, okay, you're going to get a nice big picture, okay, of the different parts of the neuron that you need to know. Okay, so you need to know the dendrites, the cell body, the axon, myelin sheath, and your terminal branches. Okay, which are all pointed out and identified on page 78, okay, of the figure, all right? So dendrites, cell body, axon, myelin sheath, and your axon terminals or your terminal branches, okay? All right? So I'm gonna let you handle that since you have such a nice big diagram, okay? And so I've got them written right here. And I'll just give you kind of what they do. So my dendrites, are the receptors of the cell. So they receive the incoming communication. So again, throughout the book, you have, they pretty much show neurons lined up. When in actuality, it's like a huge spider web throughout my nervous system. One neuron could have 15,000 other connections with other neurons. So these terminal branch or these dendrites spread out and they intermingle with other dendrites, okay? And then that's how they communicate. They receive the incoming signal or impulse from a sending neuron, okay? Cell body, which is the brain of the cell, okay? Where we have it telling the cell whether to fire or not. My axon is the long part of the cell that actually connects the cell body and the dendrites with the terminal branches. Myelin sheath is my protective covering or insulation on the axon. And then we have my terminal branches, okay, which are the sending part of the neuron, right? They hold the neurotransmitters, and then when the impulse travels through the cell, they are stimulated and they release the neurotransmitters. So I've got them kind of in order. The myelin sheath insulates the axon. This is kind of how a cell fires: dendrite, cell body, axon, and then terminal branches, okay? Which again you have on page 78, okay? So it shows you the cell, and it's going to show you from the dendrites on down, okay? And then we'll watch a video in class on Thursday and Friday of actually showing fMRIs of neurons firing, okay? All right. Okay, so that's number 6. All right, number 7 then is identify the basic processes of transmission of a signal between neurons, okay? All right, so first thing that we need to know is that what do neurons, and again, a neuron is a nerve cell. It's the cell of the nervous system, okay? Neurons produce and communicate neurotransmitters, okay? So neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers of the nervous system, okay? So like we talked about hormones being the chemical messengers of the endocrine system, neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers of the nervous system and of a nerve cell or a neuron, okay? No neurons touch. They always have a gap between them, which is called the synapse or the synaptic gap. So neurons are connected with 15,000 other neurons. So it's like a huge spider web of tangled connections, but they never touch. There's always a gap between them, okay? And then what we call, and what the term is that is referred to a neural impulse or a neuron firing or delivering neurotransmitters is called an action potential, okay? And this is a electrochemical process. Okay, which I didn't have on there, all right? So basically what happens is a charge, electricity actually goes through the neuron from the dendrites all the way through to the terminal branches, and then they release chemicals, which are called neurotransmitters. So you have electricity, so you can actually see neurons light up when they fire. They also have technology where you can hear them popping with the electricity. It's said that you have enough electricity in your brain to kind of power a 12-watt bulb, which would be kind of what's in your refrigerator. Okay, so it is an electrical signal, but then it also is chemical because it releases my neurotransmitters, which are the chemical messengers of the nervous system. Okay. All right. And then you have three parts to action potential, and we're going to expand on this Thursday and Friday when we talk about the neurotransmitters and the process and how medication affects this process. So when action potential occurs, so when electricity goes through the neuron and then releases my neurotransmitters, first thing I have communication. So the neurotransmitters are released into the gap. Okay, and then you have neurotransmitters floating throughout the synaptic gap. They are then communicated or received. Okay. By the receiving neuron. Okay. And then the second step is the sending neuron is going to perform a process called reuptake, and which is going to suck back, kind of replenish the neurotransmitters that were not communicated or received. Okay. So basically what's going to happen is the neurotransmitters are going to try to lock on to their receptor sites of the receiving cells. And so they're going to cross the gap and latch on. Okay. Now the neurotransmitters that can't do that or don't do that in this process are going to be floating in the synaptic gap. All right. So they're going to replenish those neurotransmitters back up into the cell. And then the third thing is that enzymes are going to fly in and digest any neurotransmitters left in the synaptic gap. Because again, there's what the book calls, which is a vocab term, a refractory period, which means that the neuron will not fire again until in all normal situations until the synaptic gap is clear. Okay, so that is why there's reuptake to replenish, but there's also enzyme digestion to clear out that gap, and then the cell will fire again. Okay, now this happens again. The activity that we'll do Thursday and Friday, we'll see how fast this actually happens. Okay, so communication, reception, which I probably should do that. That'd be better. Okay. Then we have reuptake, which is replenishment. And then we have enzyme digestion, which clears the gap. And then the refractory period would be over. And then the cell fires. Okay. Now, there's a great diagram of this in your book on page 81. And this is kind of where where we will pick up tomorrow. So at the top of page 81, you've got this great diagram over here, okay, of just this process that we just talked about, the action potential process. All right, and it identifies, again, the axon terminal, the terminal branches, the synaptic gap, the receptor sites, okay, and it kind of walks you through the process of reception, reuptake, and enzyme digestion, okay? Okay, so again, big parts for today are pages 79 to kind of 87 there. So you have a lot of information, but you have three really good diagrams. I showed you two of them that you can use for your notes, okay? All right, but that's number 6 and number 7. So there's also a lot of vocab in there. So make sure you're doing your vocab. And now you have your information to kind of finish up lab number 1 for the unit, okay? All right, have a good virtual Wednesday, and I will see you either Thursday or Friday.